deal. Do you have any concern that that is the case?
No, I don't think the strikes that they're taking have anything to do with a ceasefire.
Israel says that they were targeting Hamas, but you don't have any independent sources that confirm there was actually Hamas leaders in that building that was targeted. Do you?
I do not. With respect to this particular strike, no, I do not. Now, we have seen credible evidence all throughout this war that Hamas has hidden its fighters, hidden its leadership inside civilian infrastructure, inside schools. I can't speak with respect to this specific strike, but certainly those are actions that are consistent with the pattern of behavior we have seen from Hamas.
Where was that? Can you share with us some of that behavior, the pattern of behavior in particular places and so on?
So Israel said it was targeting Hamas commander Mohammed Deif, and they're yet to confirm whether he was killed or not. Do you expect them to confirm it soon? If they won't, does this concern you? Because we know more than 90 civilians killed, including children, but we don't know whether the Hamas commander was killed or not, or even he was there after all.
All right. Afternoon. I do not have anything from the top, so Matt, you want to kick us off?
Oh, that's a surprise. You want to say anything about your former boss?
The Justice Department?
No.
I don't think I do.
Senator from New Jersey.
No, I certainly don't have any comment on a law enforcement matter.
Okay, let's go to what have you guys heard, if anything, from foreign governments about what's happened over the course of the last 72 hours with the Republican convention, the nomination of J.D. Vance as vice president, his positions on Ukraine and other matters?
So I'm not aware of any specific conversations about either the vice presidential nominee of the Republican Party. Obviously, when you had NATO in town last week, you did have a bunch of conversations on the sidelines of events between people all around town about the election in the United States, just as we have conversations, social conversations about elections in other countries. I think people are well aware of the election that's happening here, but I'm not aware of any specific conversations over the last 24, 72 hours about the Republican convention.
Okay. I'll leave it there because
Daphne.
I'm sure people want to go to the Middle East.
Dr. Gaza, you said yesterday that you had seen civilian casualties come down from high points of the conflict and from where they were 6 weeks ago, but that you wanted to see them end completely. Palestinian health officials said at least 57 people were killed in Israeli bombardments. Does this increase your concerns at all, and have you raised this with your Israeli counterparts?
It doesn't increase our concerns because we have had extraordinary concerns about civilian casualties for some time. And that's why we are pushing so hard, not just pushing, but actively negotiating to get a ceasefire that would stop this daily tragedy where you see innocent Palestinian civilians being killed as a result of this war. But even before we get to what we hope will be a ceasefire, continue to push Israel to take further measures to minimize civilian harm. The Secretary pushed Ron Dermer and National Security Advisor Hanegbi when they were here yesterday. We understand. Look, in all of these strikes, Israel has said publicly that they were striking militants, and of course we've seen reported deaths of militants, including Hamas leaders in some of these strikes, but we've also seen credible reports of civilian deaths. And so it is why we continue to push so hard for a ceasefire, which is the way to really get a lasting solution to the ongoing violence in Gaza.
Hamas has accused Israel of stepping up attacks to try and derail efforts for a ceasefire deal. Do you have any concern that that is the case?
No, I don't think the strikes that they're taking have anything to do with a ceasefire deal. I think, as they've said publicly, they're trying to, as they have done from the days right after October 7th, trying to degrade and ultimately end Hamas's ability to launch attacks on the state of Israel. Separately, we have heard from Israel repeatedly, publicly. We've heard from them privately that they are committed to trying to reach a ceasefire. They're committed to the proposal that they put forward and that the president outlined publicly over a month ago, about a month and a half ago now. And they continue to remain engaged in the talks to try to reach a ceasefire.
Can I follow up?
I'll come back to you. Yeah, Said, go ahead.
Yeah. on this point that was just raised, I mean, Israel says that they were targeting Hamas, but you don't have any independent sources that confirmed there was actually Hamas leaders in that building that was targeted. Do you?
I do not. With respect to this particular strike, no, I do not. Now, we have seen credible evidence all throughout this war that Hamas has hidden its fighters, hidden its leadership inside civilian infrastructure, inside schools. I can't speak with respect to this specific strike, but certainly those are actions that are consistent with the pattern of behavior we have seen from Hamas.
Where was that? Can you share with us some of that behavior, the pattern of behavior in particular places and so on?
Yeah, in fact, Saeed, I remember you and I having this exchange several months ago, and I emailed you an article that detailed Hamas's long history of hiding in, and I think it was actually more than one article, several articles detailing Hamas. My point being, you don't need intelligence assessments from the U.S. government or anyone else. Hamas's long established behavior of hiding in civilian sites predates October 7th, and certainly we've seen it over the course of this conflict.
But that makes, let's say, targeting one person worth killing 100 people?
We don't want to see, we do not want to see civilians die. Now, I would say a lot of this would be solved if Hamas behaved like a military organization. We talk about other conflicts where this is not an issue because you don't see the military leadership hiding in hospitals, hiding in schools, hiding in religious sites, hiding in apartment buildings. If Hamas stopped doing that, it would certainly make the job of the IDF easier to target Hamas leadership without civilian casualties. But that said, as long as they continue to behave that way, the IDF still has the responsibility to do everything it can to minimize civilian casualties.
Well, the whole of Gaza is the size of metropolitan Washington, D.C. I mean, it is a guerrilla force. It's not an army. They're not allowed to have airplanes and tanks and so on. But the size of Gaza does not justify hiding your fighters inside a hospital or inside a school. Let me ask you about something that you just said. That Israel wants to degrade and deplete and render Hamas totally incapable of launching an attack like the one we saw on October 7th. Well, the president himself said that Hamas was unable to do that anymore back on the 31 of May, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Okay, so why do we continue to do the same thing over and over again? If Hamas no longer is capable of doing this, if the United States of America, the preeminent power on earth, and the one that keeps the Israeli military sustained and so on, says, look, they are no longer, this reason is no longer valid because they no longer are able to do that, so, as the president said.
A few things about that. It is our assessment that they no longer have the capability to launch an attack with the size and scale and scope of the attacks of October 7th. Hamas, without a doubt, does still pose a threat to Israel and does still pose a threat to Israeli civilians. Hamas continues to be a legitimate military target for the government of Israel to strike. That said, it has also long been our view, and you've heard me talk about this, you've heard the secretary talk about this, that Israel will never defeat Hamas through military action alone, and that it is going to require ultimately a political solution to a struggle between Israel and Palestinians that predates Hamas, that dates back decades. And if you were to ultimately reach an end to the violence between Israel and the Palestinian people that has gone on for decades, it will take more than a military campaign against Hamas, a terrorist organization. It will take a political solution. And of course, you see us continue to try to advance that.
So taking these two positions exactly that you just articulately illustrated, isn't that like a catch-22 situation? The war will go on forever because there will always be Palestinians who will fight the Israeli occupation, no matter what, under whatever conditions. So are you saying this war can go on forever? We need to have completely neutralized Hamas, completely neutralized movement.
I think that question ignores everything I have said and everything that we have been pushing to try to do for some time now. Let me just finish. It ignores the fact that we are pushing to obtain a ceasefire to stop the immediate death in Gaza. It ignores what the president has said and what the secretary has said repeatedly, and it's reflective of what we are trying to do, that we want to take that ceasefire and turn it into enduring calm, and we want to turn the enduring calm into lasting peace and stability.
Now, my last question. There was, UNRWA headquarters was flattened in Gaza. Do you have any comment on that? I mean, UNRWA has been the primary provider of aid and help, education, healthcare, and all these things for the Palestinians. Without UNRWA, well, there would be, humanitarian disaster on your hand. Do you have any comment on what has happened to UNRWA thus far?
So we do support the work that UNRWA does. We've made that quite clear. They are a critical delivery mechanism for humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people in Gaza. They have played an important role in delivering humanitarian assistance on the front lines since the outset of this conflict, and it has been really critical that that work has been critical, and it's critical that they continue it. But with respect to this strike, it goes back to the problem I was speaking to a moment ago, which you do continue to have Hamas leadership, Hamas militants that hide themselves in civilian sites, and Israel has a rightful goal of attacking militants and preventing them from continuing to threaten the state of Israel and the people of Israel, but they need to do so in a way that minimizes civilian harm. Go ahead.
Just want to follow up on your answer to Said about the day after and the plan for peace in the Middle East. You've been, from this podium or even from many other platforms in the U.S. government, you've been pushing for months now for a day after plan from the Israelis, and you're pushing with the regional players to find a formula for a peace that will last, everlasting peace. But what we hear from the Israelis is in a different page. They are opposing any Palestinian control of Gaza. They're not willing to enter any discussion internally about the day after. And in principle, the Netanyahu government and his factions are against the two-state solution. You've been pushing for months. Do you have any way of pushing more or exerting more pressure on the Israelis to engage in that?
So a few things about this. Just one kind of factual note. So with respect to plans for the day after, I spoke about this a little bit lately. We have seen the Israeli government start to develop more of their own plans and put more of their own plans forward. Not as advanced as we would like to see, certainly, but just as a factual matter, they have been starting to have those conversations internally. They've been having those conversations with us, and I believe they've been having those conversations with others in the region as well. Which is not to say that there is a fully formed plan that is ready to go, or certainly one that would be acceptable to the broader community, but they are at least advancing in their thinking of that issue. But I would say that with respect to the longer term issue, ultimately Israel is going to have to make some tough choices, which is always the case. It's been the case with this struggle between Israel and Palestinians for decades, that ultimately resolving it requires tough choices by both sides of this conflict. And to get to, in our view, a lasting end of this conflict, it's going to have to take tough decisions by Israel. The case that we will make to them, to get to your question, is that ultimately making some of these tough decisions is actually in their interest. It's in their long-term security interest. It is, of course, in the interest of the Palestinian people to see lasting stability in Gaza, to see reconstruction, to see a better form of governance than what they've had since Hamas took control of the Strip a couple of decades ago. But it's also in Israel's long-term security interest to find a lasting resolution to this conflict. So we will continue to press that case to them, but they will have to make decisions for themselves, as every sovereign country has to do. But it is just our view, and we certainly hope that the people of Israel will ultimately endorse this view as well, that continuing to have this long-term security threat staring them in the face is a problem for their security, and it is a barrier to their long-term integration with the region, which is something Israel has wanted from the very founding of the state.
What's the Palestinians' options here? Until the Israelis or the Israeli government reach a sober moment to accept that it has to do tough choices, as you said, what are the Palestinians' options to fight this occupation? that would be acceptable to you?
So, when you say Palestinians, I don't know if you mean the Palestinian people, if you mean the Palestinian Authority. There are lots of different ways. What was the answer?
Let's just say the Palestinian Authority.
The Palestinian Authority. So there are lots of different answers. That's why I asked. There's lots of different ways to answer that question. We think there are things that the Palestinian Authority can do. We think there are reforms that the Palestinian Authority can make that will make it clear that they are a reformed, revitalized authority that can serve as a credible governing structure, both for the people of the West Bank and the people of Gaza. And that's a message that they could send both to the government of Israel, but also to the Palestinian people who we know want to see a reformed PA. So that is one thing. Ultimately, what we are trying to do is work with the Palestinian Authority and work with partners in the region who we know want to see lasting peace and stability and want to see the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. And so that's what we'll continue to do. Go ahead.
Regarding specifically the attack on Saturday, Israel's attack on Gaza's Khan Yunis. So Israel said it was targeting Hamas commander Mohammed Deif, and they're yet to confirm whether he was killed or not. Do you expect them to confirm it soon? If they won't, does this concern you? Because we know more than 90 civilians killed, including children, but we don't know whether the Hamas commander was killed or not, or even he was there after all.
So with respect to Mohammed Deif, I will defer to the government of Israel to speak, to determine when they might be able to make some kind of assessment and when they will speak to it. That's ultimately a call for them to make. We do know that they were successful in killing other militants, including a Hamas commander in that strike. But that said, to answer the question, no, the deaths of any civilians are not acceptable. We don't accept the deaths of civilians in any strike. And that is why we continue to push for a ceasefire to stop this daily death inside Gaza.
Do you think these kind of situations hamper ongoing ceasefire negotiations? Because we know civilians killed at the moment, but they're yet to confirm the Hamas commander they said they were targeting was killed or not. Do you think these kind of vague situations hamper the ongoing ceasefire process? Because we know the U.S. want to seal the deal as soon as possible.
So I'm not going to speculate. I'm going to speak to what we've seen. And what we've seen is that the ceasefire negotiations have continued. And despite various public statements that are made by both sides on this conflict from time to time, what we have actually seen in the negotiations is pushing forward to try to get a deal. So I'm not going to speculate about what could happen. Obviously, people can always pull out of negotiations for their own reasons. We hope that won't happen. We haven't seen it happen yet. What we have seen has made us believe we can get to a deal, which of course does not mean that we will. We're going to continue to try to push for one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, you said that Hamas is a military organization, of course, several times.
Terrorist organization, I think. Hamas is a terrorist organization that does have certain aspects of it that make it look like a military.
This is Democracy Now! War, Peace, and the Presidency. We are breaking with convention. I'm Amy Goodman. Donald Trump has tapped freshman Ohio Senator J.D. Vance to be his running mate. Trump and Vance were officially nominated on Monday on the opening day of the Republican National Convention.
It is a great honor to move that J.D. Vance be nominated by acclamation by this Republican National Convention as its candidate for the office of Vice President of the United States of America.
J.D. Vance, who's 39, first gained fame as the author of the best-selling memoir Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir of a family and culture in crisis about growing up in Appalachia. The book was also made into a movie. Vance is a graduate of Yale Law School who served in the Marines and became a venture capitalist. He was also a never-Trumper who once called Trump America's Hitler. Reprehensible, cultural heroine, as in the drug. Noxious, a terrible candidate. But Vance later shifted and became an ardent supporter of Donald Trump. Vance won a close Republican Senate primary in 2022, in part thanks to billionaire tech investor Peter Thiel, who spent a record-breaking $10 million to support Vance's campaign. Earlier this year, J.D. Vance appeared on ABC and told George Stephanopoulos If he had been vice president in 2020, he would not have certified the results of the 2020 election.
Would you have certified the election results had you been vice president?
If I had been vice president, I would have told the states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, and so many others